10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 108. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 108 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. What's going on? How are you? Hope you had a great week and very excited to get into another episode. This week is going to be a continuation of our last episode on open triads, only this week we're actually going to put them into action and show some cool exercises that we can use to actually get through a real-life tune using these concepts that we learned last week. So before we jump into the episode, a few housekeeping things. If you'd like to get the PDF to this episode and every single other episode we've ever put out, you can go to our Patreon website. That's patreon.com/10-minute jazz lesson. Or you can head over to our website, check out all the cool stuff we have going on there, including all of our back episodes. And there'll be a bunch of links over to Patreon over there. Thank you so much to everybody that's supporting us on Patreon. It really makes a huge difference, keeps the podcast coming at you. And we have a bunch of brand new folks this week. A lot of people signed up this week, so I got to thank them. And I want to just give them all a shout out. So thank you to Jeff, Brian, Thomas, John, David, Mimi, and Scott. Thank you all so much for joining the family over at Patreon. We know you're going to love your subscription. So much cool stuff over there. Over 108 PDFs, including a free gift when you sign up. Man, you can't go wrong for only $3 a month. And know that you're supporting the podcast and getting all those fantastic things in return. Thank you all very much. So head over to Patreon, sign up. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Okay, so this episode, again, is going to focus on our open triads, which we covered last week. Now, last week was just a lesson on what open triads are, some different ways to use them. Now, what we're going to be talking about is putting these open triads to work over the tune There Will Never Be Another You, specifically the first 8 bars of There Will Never Be Another You. This is a great tune that gets played on gigs and at jam sessions all the time, has great chord changes, so it makes sense to use this tune as a template to work on this concept. So just as a quick 2-second review, open triads are basically playing a triad but skipping one note in it. So let's say that you're doing a root position open triad. Instead of playing 1-3-5, which would be our traditional arpeggiated triad, we're going to play 1-5, and then we're going to displace the third by an octave and actually play it on top. So it gives us a really nice open sound. It actually helps us practice wider intervals as well, because if you're practicing regular triads, all you're really playing is thirds and fourths. When you turn them into open triads, we get a completely different set of intervals. They're going to open up your ears, open up your technique. And just like practicing regular triads, we need to practice these in all inversions. So we talked about that a little bit last week. We went over a couple of exercises that you can do. So when we talk about the stuff that we're going to do today, actually putting this into action with good voice leading, you need to make sure that you've practiced your open triads from every inversion and you're somewhat familiar with them, or you're not going to have much success practicing the exercise that I'm going to give you today. All right, so let me talk about exercise number 1. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to start with an open position root triad, right? So the first chord in There Will Never Be Another You is a concert E-flat major 7 chord. So we're going to be using a concert E-flat major triad. And we're going to start that from the root. Now, just like any exercise that we do, what we're really striving for is good voice leading. So the first note in every measure is really going to be the one that we're concerned about. Remember, voice leading is the act of playing the closest note to the one that you came from in between chords. Now, it's not going to be the note that we come from at the end of the measure. It's actually going to be the note that we come from in the beginning of the measure. So obviously, if we start a root position triad, it's going to start on an E flat, right? Now the second measure also is E flat major 7. So we're just going to start that same triad. We're going to play the exact same thing twice. So we're going to play root 5 3. Okay? Now in the third measure, we get a D minor 7 flat 5 chord, right? So it would make sense that the perfect voice-led note from E flat on a D minor 7 chord, D minor 7 flat 5, is going to be a D. So again, we're going to continue with our root position triad in measure 3, but that's going to now be a D diminished triad. Because after all, when we use a D minor 7 flat 5, the triad is actually a diminished triad. So we're going to go off of D, we're going to play that root position open triad, D, A flat, and then up to F, 1, 5, 3. Now in the fourth measure is where it changes up a little bit, right? So instead of playing a root position triad in measure 4, now we're going to actually put the fifth on the bottom, because what this chord is a G7 flat 9 chord, right? So we have a 2, 5, 1 progression. So we're going to stay on D, but D becomes the fifth of the G7 chord. And now we're going to end up playing an open position second inversion triad. So normally, if we were playing a regular triad in second inversion, we would play 5, 1, 3, but we're going to open it up. So now we're playing 5, 3, 1 in order to make that triad open. And here's where things get a little bit complicated, and you have to start really thinking about voice leading and all the concepts that go along with that. And then we're just going to continue using the closest note in the rest of the triads for the remainder of the first 8 bars of There Will Never Be Another You. So you're definitely going to want to have the PDF in front of you when I play this exercise for you. And I'm not going to use a play along, because the whole point of this is that you should be able to hear the chord changes without any play along, because we're using triads. Those are the clearest way to outline harmony. Therefore, we should be really able to hear that chord progression without any kind of backing track or rhythm section playing behind us. So here's what exercise number 1 sounds like, keeping that voice leading good from the first note in each measure. So you can hear it sounds like There Will Never Be Another You. It sounds like the chord progression. One note, if you're not familiar with this tune, either do the same exercise over a tune you are familiar with, or familiarize yourself with this tune. Those would be the 2 suggestions I would have for you, because if you know There Will Never Be Another You, you can actually hear that chord progression happening when we play this exercise. But again, you could do this on any tune, so take your pick. All right, now in exercise number 2, we're going to do 2 things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually start on a first inversion open triad, which completely changes everything. It completely changes the notes that we're going to play at the beginning of every chord, because again, we have to maintain that really good voice leading in between measures. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to actually switch up the rhythm. Instead of playing a half note and 2 quarter notes, we're going to actually play 4 quarter notes in every measure. And this is great. So the 4th note in every measure is going to be the one that we started on. Therefore, we're really going to clearly hear the voice leading between the measures, because we're going to have that, we're going to be playing the closest note both over the 4th beat and the downbeat in each measure. So that voice leading becomes very, very clear. So here is example number 2 on your PDF from this week. This would be a great thing to have in front of you while you listen to this exercise. Again, it should really, really sound like the chord progression should be very, very clear. Maybe even clearer than the first exercise, because we're repeating that first note on beat 4. So here is example number 2. That one is actually a little bit clearer in my mind because I can really hear the relationship between the first note in every measure because I'm repeating it on beat 4 again. And you can hear this really works out to where a lot of the time the note on beat 4 and then the note on the downbeat is the same one. And that's how we can really be sure that we're using the best voice leading possible. It should never really exceed a whole step, especially in this tune. But a lot of times it's a common tone or a half step, which is ideal. And you can also hear that this is really going to open up your ears to those wider intervals, different intervals than just playing seconds and thirds. That's a huge thing that I think we get caught in, myself included. Just playing scale passages and then playing these narrow intervals that take us through the changes. This will really open you up, force you to play some wider intervals, some more interesting stuff that will really revolutionize your playing. This is hard. I don't want to come off as, thinking that this is going to be easy for everybody. It's not. It's super, super difficult. So you're really going to have to take some time when you practice this. And this might be an ongoing thing for you. Work on it for short bursts. Otherwise, your brain will get really, really tired practicing this stuff. Okay, that about does it for this week. If you've got any questions, if you don't understand any of this stuff, make sure you get in touch with me. 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com and reach out. Give me some ideas for episodes. What are you guys wondering about out there? I want to tailor these lessons to the folks that are listening to them, so I'd love to get that feedback. Okay, have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you on Monday with a brand new episode. Talk to you soon. Bye.